My name's Joel Matthew Warkentin. I am Canadian. I live on Mohkinstsis. I use he, him pronouns. And I am an artist and a photographer, and I do my best to do my best in everything that I do. I am exhibiting my series of photographs, The Nameless Boy Who Gave His Name to Sunday, with TREX Southwest this coming fall in partnership with the Exposure Festival. Ever since I was a child, I'm a third generation woodworker. So both of my grandfathers were makers. They were creatives. One was a contractor, one built toys and dollhouses. My father is a furniture builder and I'm a sculptor. Because of that, I have always been around wood and wood shops and shaping things into something else. And when I started my journey to become an artist, I avoided that because it was almost normal for me. I didn't see its value at that point. And so I was experimenting with materials, and I would make a sculpture or an object, and then I would build the support for it. I would build a plinth, or I would build a background, or I would change how you view it based on what's around it. I realized that there was, a simple answer, there was something more there, and I needed to explore that. What I ended up discovering and what I use wood for, and the reason I use wood, is I use it as a metaphor for the human body. Wood has this really insane ability to weather a lot of things. It also has a lot of features that the human body has. If the water is heavy that season, the rings change, or if it's a drought, the rings change, or if there's burls or knots or scars in the tree, a body can show it in the same way. And I found that I related wood to my own personal experience as a human of growing up the way that I did in a conservative religious household. I was built to and shaped into what I was supposed to be. And it wasn't until later that I realized that that wasn't necessarily accurate to who I was as a person. And so since I had grown up moving and shaping and organizing this material to change it from one thing into another, and realizing that mirror that happened in my own history, I kind of fell into, that's why I use wood, because I'm using wood as an extension of myself and as an extension of the human body. And going from there. And then in regards to this series and where I've ended up now, all of the sculptures, or most of them, are meant to be worn, in which case you are physically attaching wood back to the body, in which case you become part of the sculpture and the sculpture becomes part of you. So there is a significance. In regards to the wood that I am choosing, there is often a significance of color and a significance of origin. Just as people come in all different shapes, sizes, colors, everything, so does wood. And so when I began working with the material, I was focused on creating color relationships that imbued us symbolic transparency. And so I chose woods based on their geographic location and their natural colorations in order to work with other species and from other places. When it comes to the shapes and the final forms of the sculptures, there's a very dynamic conversation that happens between myself and the work that I'm trying to create. And so when it comes to my work, I plan and I plan and I plan. And I didn't realize until a few years ago that that's the wrong way to do it. Because as soon as you plan so hard, I'm just forcing that shape onto a material. I think that failure in an art career is as important as anything else. And so at this point in my work, I have an idea of the form, and then I work with the material and I start, as I call them, I start failing sculptures. I make something and realize that, this shape hasn't quite worked out or said what I need it to say, in which case I need to modify it, and I can modify it through these ways. My work deals with concepts and discusses what can happen afterwards versus what exists and what's wrong with it. Because as soon as you start talking just about this is bad and this is bad and this is bad and this doesn't work, eventually you have to start thinking about what happens next. And I would rather just skip the step of this happened and focus on what I'm doing now to take me to the next step. If someone wants to better their physical body, they go and exercise it. You can't necessarily get an overall improvement if you're doing one single exercise. I find I keep that perspective when I'm looking at anything, especially my own artwork. With that kind of at my forefront, I always am looking for conversations or readings or anything that can help teach me more about something that I already know about. As far as the symbolisms and iconography that I pull, I am very inspired by religious architecture and artifacts and clothing and any sort of spiritual tool or garment that's ever been used by any religion or any individual who has a specific status in that religion, whether that's a hierarchical one or not. I think when you start looking at so much, it all becomes very similar to each other. And pulling those similarities and finding those commonalities between specific spiritual or religious practices kind of leads to an interesting dialogue that exists between one and the other and the work and the viewer. When talking about perspectives and how you can view something in a different way, I find that one of the simplest ways to do that is by moving with something or interacting with something in a new way. Taking something and moving it away from its intended purpose and using it for something different can change your perspective. And I think that as soon as you begin doing that with an object, you can begin to do that with yourself. When I'm working with the photographs, after I've had my conversation with the sculpture, we as a team have landed on its final form. I now work with it in ways that in any possible way that I can think of. Turning it upside down, putting it on my foot or my head or my hand, or really essentially playing with it. And once that playfulness happens and that conversation continues to move forward from form to performance, it really outlines the type of conversation that specific object is having. So once we've had that conversation and we've had that interaction and that playfulness, and we work together to find its final thesis, almost its final form, its sentence, what it is saying in relation to that topic, the performative aspect of the work is pretty inherent at that point. If someone were to approach my work for the first time, I would encourage them to break it down into its parts. The same way you would look at any sort of challenging question or riddle or even a joke or something that they're reading or learning, is you break it into its main parts and then you think about each one of those individually. Because I am inspired by iconography and symbolisms that are commonly seen, a lot of time people can find spaces that they recognize, and using those recognitions and those similar places that they know in their own personal life can kind of help them guide their thought process in regards to analyzing the rest of the work. The series of photographs is a new direction for my work. And so some of my greatest moments in regards to this new series is the response to it. People have been quite generous with their positive outlook as far as how things have turned out. And so I think that would be the most excitable moment, is that because it's such a new direction, to take it and have a positive response to it and have the opportunity with TREX Southwest to have people look at it and share even more of their experiences, I think is a really great moment that I'm gonna cherish for a very long time.